Welcome to the third season of Murder in 20 podcast, where I, Bobby Stevens, am your host with a new episode every Wednesday. If you're a serious fan of true crime and love listening to podcasts, but don't want all that small talk, you've come to the right place. We get right to the facts. Murder in 20 episodes are concise and complete in 20 minutes. Less talk and more true crime. We're an independent podcast with over 125 free episodes. We love what we do and are dying to continue. If you enjoy listening to Murder in 20 every week, we'd be eternally grateful for your support by visiting Murder in 20 at Patreon, PayPal, or murderin20.com. Thank you for helping us keep our creative minds writing into the wee hours of the night. Be sure to like, share, and follow us to learn about upcoming episodes every Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get to this week's episode. Along California's Pacific coast is Carmel by the Sea. Situated in Monterey County, 120 miles south of San Francisco. Its population in 1981 peaked around 4,700. Today that number has dropped to about 3,200. Just a few blocks from the water is Rio Avenue, a narrow street with less than 20 houses. The quaint street has no sidewalks and is lined by tall leafy trees and fences, and lies in the middle of the densely populated Carmel Point. Halfway down the block sits a rambling rancher on a large lot, where Sonia HEROK-STONE lived with her young daughter Sasha. Sonia was slim and stunning, with long dark hair, parted in the middle. Her bangs were swept to the side and emphasized her long lashes and dark eyes. Later, she sported a shorter style while working as a sales representative for the blue jean company Levi Strauss. 26-year-old Michael Glazebrook had just moved in across the street. He was newly married, going to college, and working as a carpenter. Sonia had never met him and likely wasn't aware that Michael had been watching her. On the morning of October 15th, 1981, Sonia's 4-year-old daughter went to school, and Sonia headed out to run errands. While we don't know exactly what happened, we do know that Michael somehow gained entry to Sonia's home and waited for her to return. Just inside the front door, in the living room, Michael attacked Sonia. He tried to pull her jacket off and ripped her shirt. But Sonia surprised him and fought back, raking her fingernails across his face. The nail on her left ring finger broke. That didn't stop Michael. He continued his attack and sexually assaulted Sonia. Then took her pantyhose and wrapped them around her neck and pulled tight until she stopped moving. Sonia died at 30. Michael was in a frenzy and fled home. Sonia lay sprawled on the floor, the contents of her purse strewn around her body. At 12 noon, a close friend of Sonia's stopped by and opened the front door and walked into a scene she'll never forget. The Monterey County Sheriff's Department immediately responded. Crime scene tapes surrounded the driveway and house. Sonia's body was sent to the San Francisco coroners for an autopsy. Investigators canvassed the neighbors. When an officer knocked on Michael's door the day after the murder, he seemed nervous. The California Statewide Law Enforcement Association reported that officers noticed a 3 to 4 inch vertical scratch on his face and asked him about it. He told them that he just got it that day cutting plexiglass in his garage. Homicide investigators were highly suspicious and learned that Michael had 2 outstanding traffic warrants. So along with officers from the traffic division, they took him into custody. When Michael arrived at the station, his clothes were confiscated and he was handed a county jail jumpsuit. Michael could have appeared before a judge and paid his bail of $165, but officers didn't advise him of that. Nor was he told he could make a phone call, and officers failed to notify his wife. Instead, officers used the opportunity to question him about Sonia's murder, and asked again about the scratch on his face. Michael was interviewed by the FBI, and a blood sample was taken. The autopsy concluded that Sonia died from strangulation. Samples of bodily fluids found on her body were taken, including blood found under the fingernail on her left hand. Meanwhile, investigators spoke to Michael's neighbors. The Californian reported that some recalled that Michael didn't appear to be home that morning. Another neighbor said that he saw him drive away in his green pickup truck around mid-morning, while another said that his truck was gone. Investigators spoke with Michelle Wilson, a longtime friend of Michael's. She said that Michael claimed he'd been in Sonia's home the morning she was killed, and the owner of a bar stated that Michael had been in the night of the murder and that she noticed a scratch on his face. Another business owner in Carmel came forward to say that Sonia had been in his business that morning until either 10:15 or 10:45 a.m. Investigators interviewed numerous people, then over the following days typed up their reports. Afterwards, they discarded their notes. The test results came back, and the blood under Sonia's fingernail was determined not to be hers. In July 1982, 9 months after her murder, Michael was arrested and charged with Sonia's murder. Over the next year, 4 different judges threw out numerous items of evidence at Michael's preliminary hearings, and conflicting reports by a forensic serologist that testified that he found no evidence of sexual assault. However, the chief medical examiner for San Francisco said bruises on her body indicated she had been assaulted. Then a doctor in the emergency room at the local hospital testified that the scratch on Michael's face was not consistent with coming from a fingernail. Because investigators had destroyed their handwritten notes, they couldn't be compared to the typed reports, and it brought into question their credibility. And the witnesses' accounts had changed. Michelle claimed she never made that statement about Michael being at Sonia's that morning. The bar owner testified that she had not identified Michael as being in her bar that night, even though the report said she had. And 2 of the neighbors also denied making statements the way they were reported. One of the judges declared that when Michael was arrested, his rights were violated, and that tainted the evidence that was collected. In June 1983, a judge dismissed the case, saying the investigative methods were underhanded and illegal. The district attorney's office wasn't deterred. They felt they had it right the first time, and a month later filed murder charges for a second time against Michael. In November, Michael went on trial in the Monterey County Superior Court in front of a jury of 4 women and 8 men. Michael's defense lawyer offered that Michael had played softball the day of the murder and pointed out that investigators had failed to contact any of his teammates to ask if they noticed a scratch on his face. Then his lawyer questioned an evidence technician at the sheriff's office, who under oath admitted that although their records indicated a piece of evidence had been delivered to a criminalist at the Department of Justice 25 miles away in Salinas, it was later discovered in the sheriff's evidence locker. Time was a factor that neither side agreed on. The prosecution said Sonia could have been home by 10:15 a.m. The defense argued that she could have returned home as late as 11 a.m. Michael's father testified that he stopped by his son's home at 11:10 a.m. and noticed Michael removing clothing from his home. His father and mother both testified that they went to their son's game that day to watch him play, then afterwards spent the evening with Michael and his wife, and denied that he had a scratch on his face. They also testified they did not see him the next day, and they went away for the weekend. But when they returned, they did notice a scratch on his face, and that Michael had said he'd gotten into a fight at college. The testimony was all over the place and disjointed. A week into the trial, the jury was deadlocked, with only 3 vying for guilty and 9 in favor of an acquittal. The district attorney called for the murder charges to be dismissed. The DA still believed in Michael's guilt, but knew further prosecution at this point would not end with a guilty conviction. This meant that there was no double jeopardy, and the door was left open for a new trial. In California, there is no statute of limitations on murder. Michael told the media that he'd continued to work during the hearings and the trial, and that he didn't think it would hurt his reputation. Michael's life continued on. He moved 10 miles away, and for the next 39 years, continued to live in Monterey County. He became a bus driver at the high school and coached football. Then, in 2020, Monterey County announced that a cold case task force had been formed and would be taking another look at Sonia's case. The Monterey County District Attorney's Cold Case Task Force and the Sheriff's Office worked together. Evidence taken from Sonia and the crime scene had been preserved, and forensic testing had advanced greatly. Numerous items were sent to the Department of Justice's DNA lab for testing. Among the evidence was a swab taken from Sonia's right breast and blood found beneath her torn fingernail. Meanwhile, they obtained a search warrant for Michael's DNA. In August of 2021, 40 years after Sonia's murder, the DNA tests on the evidence came back and was a perfect match to Michael. It was Saturday, August 21st, when detectives donned their Levi blue jeans in memory of Sonia and set out to arrest Michael. Officers had his home under surveillance. Around 8 p.m., Michael, who was now 65, left his home driving his car. Not far down the road, he was pulled over and arrested. Michael did not seem surprised. He was booked into the Monterey County Jail and charged with Sonia's murder for the 3rd time. The same county jail where he'd been taken all those years ago. Michael pled not guilty. His bail was set at $1 million. The community, students and staff at the high school were in shock and disbelief. Michael went to trial in February 2023, and after 8 days, a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, use of a deadly weapon, and rape. He was scheduled to be sentenced in April, but it has been delayed until June 2023. Follow us on social media for updates: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. Thanks for listening to Murder in 20 with less talk and more true crime. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday for the episode of Stephen Eldridge. When Maureen offered to sell Stephen 50% of her home, he thought it was a great deal. They took out life insurance, making each other the beneficiary. Then their arrangement turned sour, and Maureen set out to have it all. We'd like to acknowledge Purple Planet for use of their music, sound effects from Vaseline Studios and Quick Sounds, and our many editorial sources who are listed on our website. If you're dying to hear more, past episodes of Murder in 20 are available for free at murderin20.com and on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and follow us to learn about upcoming episodes every Wednesday. If you'd like to support our creative independent true crime podcast, we'd be eternally grateful. Rifle through the couch cushions and donate your spare change by visiting Murder in 20 at Patreon, PayPal, or murderin20.com. Stay safe, sleep with the lights on, and don't play with strangers.